Well, hello, everyone. Again, J Cockerell. I gave you an introduction earlier, but we're going to go ahead now, and I'm going to give you a lecture related to some business things that I have gleaned myself over the years and what I got out of taking two different MBA programs. As I mentioned in the introduction, I actually did decide to go get some MBA training. A lot of friends of mine, doctors, had gotten their MBA, went back to school and got that, and I was a busy practicing doctor at the time, so I said, well, I'm not sure how those guys were able to take off a year. A lot of them were academics when they did that. I didn't really have the luxury of doing that. But once some of these programs became available to be purely online, I said, well, hey, this is a good opportunity to do that. And so I actually ended up taking one MBA program, enjoyed it so much. I took a second one in a different field. I have a real estate business here that I do. We have a building that we operate our business out of. So I said, well, let's learn about commercial real estate also. So basically, I did do that. And so just as an overview, one of the reasons I did that is because I did feel literally like a deer in the headlights when I finished my training. I didn't have any medical, non-medical training really to speak of. I went straight through to science-related things in college and took a few other kind of courses, but mainly went straight through college in 3 years, went to medical school pretty much in 3 years, and then took a year doing electives, and then went straight to internship and residency. And then I got out, and boom, you're in the real world with no really. I think I took one course in personal finance in college, and that's all the non-medical real business training that I really ever had. And my dad and granddad were both dermatologists, so they weren't business people like traditional business people. So I really didn't have it. So I felt like I needed to get that, and basically, some of the reason I felt like I needed to get that is because basically, like it says on this slide, you really have to be able to do things more than medical to be successful in practice today. And even if you're not in practice, even if you're doing something maybe in an academic world, you still have to deal with business-related issues. And we're not getting increases in our reimbursements year after year. We seem to be getting decreases. And so you have to learn how to do more with less. And we are at risk of being taken advantage of by other people that know a lot more about the business world than we do. And so you really kind of have to understand that in the real world. And so one of the MBA programs I took was the Jack Welch Management Institute. Jack Welch was considered one of the best business people. I think it was given the businessman of the century in the 2000s. Really very, very successful guy, and he had a program, Jack Welch Management Institute. So I said, well, I really admired him, so I decided to go on and take that program. And so the whole concept of the program was centered around winning, and it basically took Jack Welch's strategy that he used at GE for many years, and took a lot of those ideas and said they created courses around those. And so one of the courses we had was basically the course on strategy, the strategy of being successful in business. And basically what Jack Welch would do, and this is a very interesting kind of concept, he would take all of the people at GE, all of the senior management people, they would go to a house that the company owned. I think it was in Wisconsin or in Michigan or something like that. And they would go there over kind of a long weekend. And they would call these things workout sessions is what they would call them. And we get every single presenter, and these were guys who were in charge of multi-million-dollar divisions within GE, to give their year-long strategic plan. And each one of those had to be 5 slides long, no more than 5 slides, not like this lecture that's got 50 slides. And the presentations had to be no longer than 5 to 10 minutes. And that's for like a multi-million-dollar deal. If it's more than 5 slides, you cut it off. More than 10 minutes, sit down. And that's kind of the way that he ran that. So we had the final examination of the strategy course. We had to basically do that ourselves. So we had to learn how to cut down a strategy into 5 slides with basically no more than 10 minutes in length. And so if you want to do this these were kind of the main concepts that they presented in the strategic course, that this is what you really need to do to look at how to strategize in any business. You have to understand your playing field, what they've done this year, what you've done, what's next, and then what's your winning move going to be. And so the first one, understanding the playing field, that's kind of understanding everything that's going on in your industry. For us, it's the healthcare market, or maybe for me, it's dermatology and dermatopathology. If you're not necessarily a dermatologist, maybe you're an orthopedic surgeon or whatever, you have to know kind of what's going on in your field. So that's understanding. That's kind of basic. Know what you're dealing with. The second one is looking at your competitors. What have they done in the last year? Did they gain or lose market share? Are you doing better than they are, or are they doing better than you are? Did they introduce new services? What did they do that maybe was game changing, and did anything catch you off guard? That's kind of the next step. After that, you then look what you've been doing. Have you done anything bold or anything to make your practice or your industry or your business better? Have you introduced anything new? What have you done? Did you beat your competition or did they beat you? The fourth slide then basically is what's the potential danger that you're facing? Looking around the next corner, what keeps you up at night? What are some of the things that you might have to deal with? What could happen if the industry was disrupted? Maybe there was a merger with a competitor, some breakthrough, something like that. Those are all things that you need to be kind of trying to anticipate what's next. And then the last thing is, what's your winning move going to be? Basically, this is kind of like you've done all this strategic planning. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do that you're going to change the game, and then you're going to win? You're going to win in the game. That's basically kind of the way that Jack sort of formulated his strategy. Now, in order to be successful, you have to develop a winning team. So, and have a positive team, obviously, you have to have a vision. And so if you're in practice or whatever you are, even if it's just what you do personally, do you have any kind of a mission statement where you're going to go? And what is the vision for you and your practice going to be? So you're the leader, so you've got to set the vision. And you've got to make this vision come alive. It's going to be something that when people work for you, they say, wow, this is a great place. This is what I work. I get the vision. I get what's going on here. This is something that I'm excited about. It's something I really want to do. And you need to make that crystal clear why it's good for the organization, and then make sure that that vision aligns with reality. And a lot of people, you talk to them, say, what's the vision of this company? They sort of say, well, we want to be successful. Well, that's sort of mushy. And you take a look at some of these quotations here, asking things about why you're in business. What do you stand for? What does your practice stand for? What's your stand as a human being? What's your stand for your business? And these other quotes, like from Proverbs, if there's no vision, the people perish. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Simon Sinek, famous business guy, basically says people do business with people because of the why they do business, not because of what the business does. And he makes an analogy between Apple and IBM. Apple is more of an experience, whereas IBM is more kind of a nerdy kind of computer-driven sort of thing. So basically, you have to kind of keep those things in mind when you're setting up a vision. If you're going to get somewhere and you're, be vision-driven. So you're at point A there, and you have a vision where you're going to go. And if you keep that vision in mind, there's going to be lots of things happen along the way that are going to distract you, and tragedies and great things happen and bad things happen. So like little cartoon over there that the little kid drew, your plan is you think it's a plan point A to point B, but there's lots of stuff that goes in the way. And that's actually true. But if you stick with your vision and focus on your vision, you're going to experience the setbacks. But if you persist, you'll eventually be successful. So in order to really have that vision, you really need to have a good mission statement, something that's actually tangible, aspirational, attainable, and it's something that's going to wake you up. It's going to, not put you to sleep, something that paints a vivid image of where you want to go. And basically, you want to have something that every person that works for you can align behind that mission statement. And these are a couple of examples of strong mission statements. Like, for example, Nike. These are very powerful ones to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. I mean, that's huge. Not just every athlete on the high school football team, but every athlete in the entire world. And they've pretty much done that. Southwest Airlines, highest quality customer service, warmth, friendliness, individual pride, company spirit. You all have flown on Southwest Airlines, and they do embody that mission statement. Amazon, where you can buy anything. Google, make the world's information universally accessible. So those are all very successful companies, and they live those mission statements. Well, let's take a look at a bad one, private school. Now that sounds great. Our goal is to liberate the joy in learning with every child and nurture them as citizens. Sounds good, but it's weak, it's mushy. You can't really put a finger on exactly what that means. And so things like that, or petroleum companies committed to being a good company, those are just things you stick on the wall and you never even read them. And those really don't really do anything for your business. So, and I'd say for me, out of all the things I got out of these MBAs, this was probably the most valuable. We actually had a person come down from Jack Welch and spend a weekend with us and work with us on developing. And this is the mission statement that we have in our business. This goes on every single thing that goes out of our laboratory, every bill, every letter, every email. I mean, this goes on every single thing. And when we hire people, we want to make sure that they fit into this vision. If they don't, they're really not for us. When do you deal with this vision? Well, you deal with it all the time. You talk about it at meetings. You talk about it when you're talking to potential clients. You talk about potential customers. So this is something that you use. Jack Welch would say that he would talk about the mission statement until his tongue was numb. So you do it all the time. So that's important. You got to have a vision, got to have a mission. You got to know where you're going. Now, another thing we learned a lot about was about people management. And this is very important as well. I mean, this is probably, gosh, managing people, hiring, and this kind of thing. This is harder in many ways than practicing medicine. But if you look at people overall, one of the things that basically that Jack Welch would do is they would classify people into 1 of 4 quadrants. And that was something that we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, people tend to sort of segregate along one of these kind of 4 general personality traits. And we actually use this thing called a DISC profile. And so when we're hiring somebody, we'll have them fill out a form or anything like this, figure out where they are, what kind of style they tend to basically use when they deal with their life. And basically, you coach those people depending upon how they kind of show up in the world. You don't want to go to somebody that's in the C and S conscientious category, coach them the same way as somebody that's like the D and I category where I fall into. Somebody that's in the D category, they don't like to be told what to do. Somebody in the conscientious or steadiness category, they need somebody to tell them what to do. So you have to kind of know who you're dealing with when you're coaching people. And this is my personal DISC profile. And it's very valuable to kind of know what your personal status and personal style is. And it's important to know that the pitfalls, sometimes people that are D and I tend to kind of do things and turn around and see who's following them. And sometimes nobody's following. So you have to kind of know those sort of styles that you have. Now you can take everybody in the world and you can kind of put them into one of these 4 quadrants here. I mentioned this before. And the first quadrant that you really love are the type 1. These are your high-performing employees or maybe partners or whatever. They're basically doing a great job. They have great values. They're knocking it out of the park. You want to do everything you can to keep that group. You're at risk of losing that group because everybody else wants them. So they get recruited away from you. But you want to try to keep them. You want to give them raises, do whatever you can to keep that group. The ones that have the high values and they're low performing, they're sort of like the eager beaver. They really want to learn. They want to do better. They want to get better. They can be coached. And the idea is to get that group and move them up into the type 1 category. The type 2, they just don't really even belong. They're the ones that show up late for work. They sort of don't care about the job. You hired them. Maybe you sort of needed somebody to fill a gap in something. You don't want them in your organization. Get rid of them. They really don't belong. Jack Welch would get rid of 10% of his organization every year. Maybe you don't have 10% of people you need to get rid of every year, but basically if you have those kind of people, they're drags on your business, get rid of them. The one in the upper left corner though, they're the ones that are the most dangerous. These are the high performing people, but have the low values. These are the people that maybe are bringing in $1 million worth of sales, but they're back in the coffee room, they're complaining, they're always, they're talking bad about somebody, they're really kind of poison, and they're the hardest ones to get rid of because they're performing well. And you look at them and you say, well, gosh, you're bringing all this money, but the thing is they're doing all this other stuff and they're the ones that are going to end up hurting your organization. We always tend to keep them too long. And every time I've done that in my own career, my own business, I've always regretted it. I should have gotten rid of them 2 to 3 years earlier. So just take it from me, even though it's painful to get rid of them, you want to get rid of them because they're hurting you behind the scenes and you don't even know it. Now, hiring, this is way harder than practicing medicine. Basically, it's difficult to hire good people. After COVID, there are a lot of people who don't even want to work anymore. They don't want to come to the office anymore. So it's just gotten more and more difficult. But you do have to have some, if you follow some certain rules, you can be more effective at your hiring. Jack Welch said he was basically about 80% effective at hiring good people. I probably maybe 30 to 40%. Most of us mere mortals are not that good, but if you follow some of these principles, it's really helpful. And basically what he would say that you should do is basically look at the basic litmus test of intelligence, integrity, and maturity. If they don't have that, they really don't even get an interview. Once they do, we'll talk about the 4 E's and 1 P, and those are very important things to remember when you're hiring people. And these are the 4 E's: the energy, energize others, edge, execute, and passion. So energy, these are people that thrive on action. They're optimistic. They love life. They love their work. They love people. They start in the day with enthusiasm. They're just really energetic. You're happy to have those guys around. The ability to energize other people. They can inspire others to take on difficult tasks, take on the impossible. They have strong personal persuasive skills. They're good communicators. They're serious about their results, but they don't take themselves too seriously. These have an upbeat attitude. They have the ability to they're team leaders. You kind of want those people. Edge, kind of where you've got somebody that might be like a sergeant out in the field that knows when to make the decisions. They don't have to call back to headquarters all the time. Somebody that knows how to make the tough calls. They don't need a lot of overlying supervision, but they're not rogue. They're still with the organization, but they can make independent decisions and move forward when you're not necessarily there to kind of watch out for them. Execution, basically that's where you move beyond strategy. You put your decisions into action. If you don't put the decisions into action, no matter how good the strategy, never going to go anywhere. So you have to be able to execute. And that's how you basically win, is by executing. And then finally, having passion. Authentic concern for staff, patients, others, enthusiastically maximize everybody. So they want the full team to win. They want to celebrate their success. They're excited when things go right. And so this is another feature. So if you find people that have got these 4 E's and 1 P, boy, they're the kind of people you want to get. Now, you also want to make sure that the people you have that are working for you or with you are plugged into the right place. You want the people that are the A position, for your A positions to be your A players. You'll be surprised how many businesses and organizations you'll have a C player in an A position. Somebody that's really maybe trained like a clerk in a CEO visionary position. And companies fail because they do that. So you want to make sure that you match your people, that your A players in the A positions, your C players in your C positions, et cetera. You don't want to have the wrong people in the wrong positions. Interviewing. Boy, this is important also. And we all interview people in academics. If you're an academic person, you'll be interviewing people for residency. If you're in business, you'll be educating people to come to work for you. So you have to be aware of the emotional and psychological biases associated with interviewing. Probably one of the biggest ones that I see is somebody comes in, you're interviewing them, and they remind you of somebody. So, wow, that person reminds me of my wife, or that person reminds me of my brother or sister, my friend. They aren't necessarily the same as your brother or your sister or your friend. They could be totally different. They could be a criminal for that matter. So just because they seem like somebody, don't make snap judgments about them. Don't brand them. Don't plug them in. You want to make sure you're pretty clinical about the way you do this. And you want to always check references. And you want to check references other than the ones they give you. Try to find people that they worked in the same organization there, but they're not the one they wrote down on their list. Because guess what? They're going to say that, oh, this is the best person I ever worked for. And then that kind of comes out to not be the right information for you. And then I always recommend taking at least some time during the interview where you say, okay, we're going to stop for a minute. Instead of just talking, I'm going to ask you some boring questions that I ask everybody. I'm going to read them off a piece of paper or something like that. You'd be surprised what kind of information comes out when you do something like that. So always recommend some kind of structure questions to the interview as well as just kind of some general talking. Some other pearls, Jack used to say, get under everyone's skin, get every brain in the game. He would go to the factory floor. He would talk to the janitors. He would want every brain in the game, sort of like a wiki kind of mentality. And he wanted to have a flat organization, not where it was from top down, where everybody felt like they had some kind of an input in the organization. See change as an opportunity, not a threat. All changes happen all the time in the business world and in the academic world. There's a book by John Cotter, Harvard MBA professor, Nobel Prize winner, called Leading Change. I would recommend maybe getting that. Lean techniques, we'll talk about that. He's also talked about being 1 or 2 in the business or getting out. That's not a bad thing to look at your business if things are really kind of dragging you down. Don't keep doing it anymore. And finally, you want to celebrate. We all tend to be working in the business arena, but it's always important to celebrate your wins, make your business fun. We learned about Porter's 5 forces. This is important. Michael Porter of Harvard, also a Nobel laureate, came up with this a number of years ago. You can take a look at any business and plug it into this matrix here. There are these factors that really kind of deal with that kind of cause the business to kind of go one way or another. Competition, supplier power, which could drive prices up or down. Buyer power could drive prices up and down. Threats of substitution, threats of new entry. You're substitution all the time. Like, oh, computers are going to make doctors obsolete, that kind of thing. You know, so these are all things that you have to realize. So you can take any business arrangement, no matter what it is, academics, private practice, whatever, plug it into this matrix and sort of see the factors that really cause it to kind of move in one direction or another. I'd also recommend when you're making any strategic decision to think about using a SWOT analysis. And this is really a very, very powerful technique where you look at the strengths, what your organization excels at, the weaknesses. These are sort of internal negative things within your organization that need dealing with, opportunities, external things that can be beneficial to your organization, and threats, which are external factors that can harm your business. So take something down and say, okay, I'm thinking about maybe buying a new piece of equipment, just as an example. You look at, does your organization, you know, how would this strengthen my organization? Is there anything weak about, maybe we can't afford it. Maybe it'll put too much cash lost in paying for it. You know, what kind of opportunities? Maybe it can add us to new service or something. And then threats, you know, is it something that could, maybe it breaks down, costs a lot of money. So those are kind of things that you can take a look at that when you're making any kind of decision. It's a very, very powerful tool. Strongly recommend you learn about that and practice it. Lean techniques, eliminating waste, is very important. And these are the 8 types of waste that any business should be looking to try to eliminate at any given time. And in the medical world, obviously, you take a look at number 6, waiting. I mean, gosh, how many times do people sit in a waiting room? How many man and women hours are wasted with people just waiting on things? Underutilizing skills. You know, what if you got somebody that's really a genius at something, but you've got them in the cloakroom, something like that. So you want to make sure that you look at these types of waste and say, where is this waste occurring in my business, in my practice, in my life, whatever, and how can I get rid of this waste as much as possible to make myself as efficient as possible? And in a setting of declining reimbursement, as in the medical world, you need to do everything you can to try to eliminate this waste. And then some ways to do that is using these lean techniques, these so-called Kaizen, constant improvement. You're constantly asking yourself, how can I improve my organization? And then this thing down the bottom, the 5 whys. If you ask about any question, no matter what it is, if you're in an M&M conference, and maybe why the patient died, if you ask the question 5 times, you'll eventually get to the real solution. You know, why did this patient die? Well, they were sick. Well, why were they sick? Well, maybe they got a inappropriate antibiotic reaction or so. Why did they get the bad antibiotic? Well, maybe the pharmacist, maybe you couldn't read your writing. Well, why couldn't you read your writing? Well, maybe I didn't write well. So you keep asking why enough, you'll eventually get to the real solution. So that's a very, very important analysis technique that you can use. The concept of 6 Sigma is something else we learned a lot about. This basically means the number of deviations beyond the mean, that basically the further away you get there, the closer you are to perfection. And this was originally developed in the 1980s by engineers at Motorola looking to improve quality. And basically, if you get to 6 Sigma, you're basically 99.9997% error-free. That's kind of the level that the airline industry needs to focus on, or companies like self-driving cars, those kind of things. They need to operate at that level of safety because people can die. In the medical world, we probably operate around 4 Sigma. And so if you compare these together, you say, well, 4 Sigma, that's about 99% accurate. So you hear that all the time, well, 99% accurate. That sounds good. But really, if you look at that, that would be 2 short or long landings at most major airports every day. 6 Sigma, 1 every 5 years. If there's a short landing on a runway, it makes the national news. So if we were operating at 99% success rate, we'd be hearing about that every day. 200,000 wrong drug prescriptions every year. 68 wrong prescriptions every year. We're probably closer to 200,000 in the United States. Look at the surgery, again, from a medical perspective, 5,000 incorrect surgical operations a week versus 1.7 incorrect operations a week. So some examples of where Six Sigma, we should try to strive for that. We really probably haven't gotten there in medicine, but that should be our goal, to try to get to Six Sigma. So how can you apply this to your medical practice? Well, it's interesting. We actually did a study on this and actually did a project on this a couple of years ago. We kind of looked all through the world's literature. We could only find 2 examples in all of the world where this had been applied to medical practices, interestingly enough. There's one dermatology example in Belgium, where they actually use this technique to reduce patient waiting and increase satisfaction. We actually this is in press right now, in a publication in a journal called Skin. We actually brought in a Six Sigma black belt to go to a dermatology practice, and we analyzed that practice over the course of several days. Actually, really over the course of several weeks. He actually was on site for 3 days. But we actually did come up with this document and prove that we could come up with information that could be used to make a dermatology practice more successful if they apply these lean techniques. So this is something that you can do in your practice. You can do this with any practice, even, and certainly not just limited to medical practice. It's something that we all should be using to try to decrease waste and use these lean techniques to make us better. Also, make sure that you get ready for a crisis, just like that little diagram we mentioned before, where you get the up and down kind of things. This is going to happen to you. Gosh, I just think of close friends of mine that suddenly their wife or family member was diagnosed with cancer, or they had an automobile accident, they're in the hospital, or maybe they got COVID. So things happen. Maybe it's a weather-related thing. Maybe you get a hurricane. Maybe you get a tornado. Maybe something like that happens. And so if something like this happens, make sure that you get the best people you can, get personal support, stick with it, go through it. You're going to be stronger on the other end once you go through this, but realize you're going to have a crisis. You want to make sure that you be prepared for. We had an entire course on crisis management in the Jack Welch program. Think about pivoting and diversifying. As doctors, basically, we think about getting all of our income from just doing medical practice. But there's a lot of positive things you can do by doing other things, other related business interests. And at some point, if you're a medical doctor, you're hearing a lot about this in some of the other lectures. There's a lot of benefit of owning real estate. If you're a doctor, I'm not going to get into a lot of it here because you're going to hear a lot about that from some of the other lectures. But gosh, you can get an asset that increases in value. You can sell it. It's just like owning a home. You can have tax write-offs or all sorts of values to owning your own business, your own property, if you're a medical doctor. So in conclusion, this MBA education was super valuable for me. I learned lots of things that hopefully I'm sharing with you and that you're going to learn from some of the other lectures in this course. I've implemented many of these things into my business since doing this around 10 or so years ago. So this is something that I strongly encourage you to listen to these lectures, incorporate some of these things, learn about them more and more as you go on. You don't necessarily have to get an MBA, but you can take other lectures and other courses and things like that. But you want to be educated about these things because they're so important, and you're going to be dealing with people throughout your career that have more knowledge about this than you do. So thank you very much for your attention, and I really hope you find this lecture and the others that you're going to be hearing valuable. And please feel free to contact me at any time with any questions. I'll be more than happy to email you back and answer them to the best of my ability. Best wishes to you in your career, and good luck to you.